Alrighty. Well, it is 4:30 and we want to respect your time. I know that we sent out this webinar last night and that you all were just notified about your moving on to the second round last night. So I appreciate y'all taking the time out of your busy days to learn some more about Venture for America. Like I shared, we're recording this webinar, and so if you have to leave early, if you don't get everything, this webinar recording will be in your inbox, as well as some other tips and tricks no later than tomorrow morning. Um, we're going to end promptly at 5:30 Eastern. I really want to just give a shout out, first of all, to all of you for progressing to the second round of the application. We appreciate your interest in Venture for America, and we hope that today's webinar gives you a window into what it's like to wake up every day and be a VFA fellow. I want to give a second shout out to all four fellows who are on the call. It's 4:30, which means the workday is not over, and they're going to be here till 5:30. So I bet they're going to have a little bit of work to do later. But appreciate y'all giving back to the VFA community and helping these fellow candidates prepare to become fellows. So without further ado, my name is Jacob Robinson. I am a 2014 VFA fellow. I spent my fellowship in New Orleans, and I won't get too deep into that because you can talk to me anytime. And today is about the four fellows that are on the call, but I do work on the Venture for America team now. I'm a recruiter, and I also focus on a lot of our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. What that means to Venture for America is that we know that there are a lot of barriers to becoming an entrepreneur. If you're a young person, that's what our entire program is about. But we know if that a person identifies as a woman, as a racial or ethnic minority, if they have college debt, if they're a first generation college student, if they identify with the LGBT community, the list really goes on in terms of identity, but there are extra or additional barriers to becoming an entrepreneur as a young person if you identify with any or all of the above. And we envision a world where any young person that wants to become an entrepreneur can become one, which is why diversity, equity, and inclusion is an asset to us at Venture for America. So that's enough about me. We are going to start off with some introductions from our fellows. And first up,
Hi.
hey,
Hey, what's up? Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Rana. I'm a 2019 fellow here in the best city, Detroit. I currently work as a customer service lead for Amatis, which is an IoT company in the lighting control spaces. And I actually have no idea what that like fully meant. So I studied international politics at Penn State and decided that the government was not the path for me. So when I heard about BFA, I knew that it'd be an opportunity for growth, which is the biggest thing, and what skills I wanted to gain. Um, Obviously, knowing this is a 2 year fellowship, it's also a 2 year learning opportunity. Um, the most rewarding part of my BFA experience so far, like I said, I'm a 2019 fellow, so I've only really been a fellow for a couple of months at this point, and it is definitely the people. And I know that everyone you talk to will say the exact same thing, but it's really as cliche as it sounds. It is incredible the amount of people you get to learn about, the amount of people you get to meet and get really close to. And these are people who you would never really walk into on an everyday basis. So being in a space together where you can learn and grow as a community is something that has been extremely powerful and really exciting for me as a fellow. And Detroit, we have our largest class, the 2019 class, the largest. There's 31 of us here in Detroit. So it's been really, really fun to get to know people and to also know that you have friends in this new city. That's always been a fear that a lot of college students experience when they move somewhere new after college. Like, will you have friends? And it is a lot harder to do than you expect. So having this built-in community has been really, really impactful and really exciting to be part of.
next up is Ben.
Hey y'all. So my name is Ben Weinberg. I studied systems engineering at University of Virginia. Um, Now I live in Birmingham, Alabama. Moved here a little bit over a year ago, and I'm doing product marketing analytics at a company called Fleetio. So we're a fleet management software as a service platform. If you think about a you know uh, um, some sort of company that might have a fleet of vehicles and sends them out every day to generate revenue. We basically provide a platform that helps them track their preventative maintenance, make sure that they're getting all the proper oil changes, that they're tracking their fuel spend and their maintenance spend, so that they can really focus on what they're good on. Living in Birmingham has been a pretty awesome experience so far. We have a great cohort of almost 50 people who live down here and work at different startups in the city. So really looking forward to sharing my experience with y'all.
Thanks, Ben. Margot, you are up next.
Hey everybody, I'm Margot Geppert. I went to Ohio State University. I'm a 2018 Venture for America Fellow, hence Jacob's shout out to the Buckeyes. Thank you. I work in Philadelphia for a company called Shift Capital, which is a equitable real estate developer in a few northern Philadelphia neighborhoods. And I'm on the development team, which just means that I sit in between leasing and construction, trying to take a company that would like to move into one of our buildings and determining how to build out their space and move them in. And I studied city and regional planning at Ohio State. I worked for the city of Columbus and their Department of Neighborhoods, which was the mayor's creation after Columbus won the Smart City Award. And so I came into Shift with definitely like an urban planning and programming lens as well, which helps help us dig a little deeper into how these commercial tenants and these real estate decisions are really impacting the community's lives. And Philadelphia has definitely been one of the best cities to have gone from one VFA city to another. It really just rings true to see what in two very contrasting places, how thoroughly VFA is helping in both my hometown of Columbus and Philadelphia of those.
All right,
You're up
it's
next,
me,
Slater.
J-Rob. All right, it's
Slater.
me. Appreciate the Columbus shout out, Margot. Hey everyone, I'm Slater. Went to Stanford. As you can tell by the numbers next to my name, I'm the old person here. So I've actually been in Columbus for 3 years. Did 2 years or I guess I did 3 years at Ticketfire, which is an event ticketing technology startup here in Columbus. And then a couple of weeks ago, I left and started a new job with Bark, who does BarkBox. If any of you are dog lovers or friends, been on that job for about 4 weeks now, working with one of the founders to launch a new food service, starting in Columbus and then hoping to go national by the end of next year. Columbus has been awesome. As you can tell, I was on the West Coast for college, but I also grew up out there about an hour and a half south of Stanford. So moving to the Midwest after spending most of my life in Silicon Valley was a big shift, but a wonderful shift. I think the people out here in the Midwest are the most helpful and exciting and determined people that I've ever met. So I've really made Columbus a home, and I'm thankful to VFA for that. And I'm looking forward to meeting you all and having this conversation today.
Excellent. Well, appreciate all four fellows for introducing themselves, and we will have time later to hear more from each of them. But before we do, our schedule for today is to talk a little bit about Venture for America, and then we are going to jump into the panel and then some Q&A. So let's jump right in. So first, I want to start by reading Venture for America's mission, and then I'm going to tell you why it is important. So Venture for America is creating economic opportunity in American cities by mobilizing the next generation of entrepreneurs and equipping them with the skills and resources they need to create jobs. The reason why I took the time to read this is because you all are the next generation of entrepreneurs. The fellows that are on this call are the next generation of entrepreneurs. If you just want to get a startup job, Venture for America is more than that and may not be the best fit for you. if you are looking to get a startup job and make an impact on a city or take advantage of our resources and our community, but also contribute to our community, if you are excited about the 14 cities that we work in addition to working at a startup, getting a startup job through us, becoming a startup leader, becoming a founder with us, then Venture for America is a great community for you. And so I really encourage everyone when they're writing their essays to take a look at this mission and really tell a personal story about why VFA is the next best fit for you. Do not tell us what you think we want to hear. Tell us your story, because you're the only one that can do that. So we always like to take the time to like root our conversations and our mission, because that is what drives us every single day. So on a similar point, our cities, like Slater alluded to, a lot of our cities are in the Midwest. They're on the East Coast. They're down south. We don't have any cities right now on the West Coast. What these cities have in common are that they have thriving and growing entrepreneurial ecosystems. The challenges that they all share is that it's tough to recruit a student from Stanford or from the South or from the East Coast or from the Midwest to decide to go to Kansas City or Charlotte or Detroit or San Antonio to look for a startup job when they could move to New York City, they could move to San Francisco, Boston, or Chicago. And so the deal that we make with these startups is that they will give you an opportunity to learn what it's like to contribute to a business, to become a leader at a startup, and treat you like an apprentice. And so when thinking about Venture for America cities, think about the opportunity that exists to move to a city with startups that are growing at the same rate as startups in other places, but there might be like a leadership opportunity there that's earlier for you, because there's less fish in the sea in these smaller ponds, if you will. And so to give you a quick overview at a glance, when you apply to Venture for America, you will find out in about 2 months from your deadline. So you all applied in October. By the middle of December, you all will know that you are Venture for America Fellows. In April of next year, a portal is going to open. That portal is called Match. We are not going to place you at a startup. Instead, you are going to drive your own job search and interview with startups that we have sourced. They will pitch you, you will pitch them. We will provide direct introductions on both sides. We have had fellows work at over 250 companies across the 14 cities that we work in. Last year, there were more than 500 opportunities on Match for the 200 fellows that we had. So in July of next year is training camp. So I will characterize training camp as Startups 101 or Startup Boot Camp. You're going to get exposed to some hard skill training, some soft skill training. And while all of that is important, I think training camp equips you to be ready to Google your way through any problem on day one of your startup, because that's what most entrepreneurs end up doing anyway. I would think that most fellows would identify the community and the camaraderie that you build in your class as some of the most important parts of training camp. I want to get to some of Helena's questions because they're fitting for now. Helena asked what happens if you don't get any offers via Match. You will get an offer because we will work with you until you find the right fit. Generally, Match goes from like April to July, like right before training camp. But if you do not find the right fit for you by training camp, we're still going to work with you during training camp and even after training camp. So a lot goes into onboarding and supporting you throughout this process. Once training camp ends in July, to get to your other question, Helena, you're going to move to your VFA city in like August or September of next year. So kind of like this time next year. And that's where you will work for 2 years at a startup. Lastly, as an alum, you can continue to work at that startup. You can join a second startup like Slater did, or you can pursue an entrepreneurial venture with VFA. The resources afforded to you as a VFA fellow are available to you for life. I see some questions here, and I'm going to wait until the end to address these because I want to get to the panel because that's the main show for today, but I promise we'll get to your questions. So I'm going to rip through the application real quick. You all have all completed the activities section of the application. Congratulations on making it to the essay phase. Those essays are due next Monday by 11:59 p.m. your local time. After that, you'll have an interview with a VFA fellow, an alum, or a team member. And lastly, we will have selection day, which will take place in December in one of our two cities, two of our 14 cities, excuse me. And like I mentioned, you all are in the online essay stage. So I'm going to jump to the panel, and then we're going to have time for the Q&A at the end, just because I want to take advantage of this time that we have with the fellows. So let me stop sharing my screen. And we look like the Adams family here if you open up your view to the grid view. And so I'm going to kick it off with some questions. And any of the panelists, feel free to join. It's not necessarily that we have everybody speak, but if you'd like to speak, we'd love to hear from you. So first and foremost, how did you find your job through Venture for America?
Is someone else speaking? I could go first.
You got it. You got it.
Okay, so VFA also has career fair things, and I went to the Cleveland Career Fair, and I met the company that I currently work at there. And that was our initial conversation. We talked, and then after that, I had 2 more interviews with them before having an on-site here in Detroit where I got to meet with them and meet the rest of the team before accepting my offer.
I'll jump in here with a little bit of my. So once I found FA fellow, and after I finished celebrating, I got on to Match, and before I actually looked at any companies, I sat down and thought, what are the things that I really want out of this fellowship experience? And one of them was a mentor. And the other thing was to work for a small company where I could have a leadership role if I did well in the first year or two. The third was equity, and the fourth was in some sort of industry that excited me. And so when I looked through all the different options, and similar to Rana, when I was in Columbus for the job fair in Columbus in early 2016, I met a company, TicketFire, that worked in the sports industry. I played soccer at Stanford, so working in the sports industry was something that seemed familiar and interesting. I met the CEO, who said he would bring me into the company and make sure that I had a great 2-year fellowship experience. And they had actually hired a fellow before, so they knew, the caliber of person that they were hiring and how to get the most out of them. 3, it was a small company. So at the time, there was just one full-time developer, a president, and a couple other part-time people. So I would be the 3rd full-time employee. And 4th, got some equity. So if the company ever did well, could be more than the VFA salary in terms of a financial payout. So once I kind of lined up all those opportunities and other ones fell out, it was just a natural match. And then visiting Columbus myself was a really big thing. Being from California, I wanted to make sure I was comfortable in the city that I was going to be moving to for 2 years. And I came away from that weekend in Columbus actually wanting to move there really badly. So it all worked out once I defined the criteria at the first part of the match process.
Cool, I can hop in. So unlike Slater, I had absolutely no idea what I was looking for when I started going through the match process. One of the cool things about match is that you as a fellow can reach out to companies, but companies can also reach out to you if they think that you have a skill set or an experience that kind of fits what they need as a company. And so some advice I'd gotten from the VFA team and some older fellows was to keep an open mind when it comes to match, in terms of what cities you're looking at, what size companies you're looking at. And so I kept a really open mind, and other than really the role that I was looking at, and I knew I wanted to do some sort of operations or analytics or marketing. I didn't filter down based on city or based on industry. So at one point, I was talking to a 300-person company in the kind of food delivery space. I was talking to a few kind of 30-person companies in the SaaS and the software as a service space who were about to go through this kind of rapid growth phase. And then I was talking to a one guy who had just started a retail company for high-end it was hunting gear, and I would have been the first hire running his marketing. So it was like really all over the gambit. But it was kind of through the match process that I realized, similar to Slater, that I wanted the type of mentorship that I could get from a kind of mid-sized organization, but also I wanted the responsibility and the flexibility that would come from working at a smaller company. And so it was really through the match process that I kind of discovered, what type of company I was looking for, what type of experience that I wanted, and that really helped me land at the company that I'm at now.
Going off of Ben, I actually had a really similar experience that I had to narrow down a wide scope in order to end up where I am now. Almost in the sense of even trying to decide which of the kind of most common 3 VFA priorities of city, company, or role I wanted to prioritize.
Can you all hear Margot? No problem. We'll give her a second to restart, and when she jumps back on, we will jump into we'll jump back to her answer. But kicking it back to the other fellows, what is your role at the company that you currently work at? And tell us some more about what your company does.
We're back. Sorry.
She's back. She's back.
We're back.
Let her rip.
We're in a large industrial building, so sometimes I guess it was I ended up current internships and turning in thesis and deciding if VFA was even the way that I wanted to go. Was trying to juggle a lot of different directions, and what truly helped me the most, and I would encourage all of you to do now, was the step in the process you're at right now is when I realized I even wanted to do VFA, like actually having to articulate why I wanted to do this helped me narrow down what I wanted out of it, and what I wanted out of the next 2 years of post-grad. And then it was truly astonishing to me how generous all the VFA, the current fellows and people going through the application process at Ohio State were to talking for sometimes up to an hour about the different options that there are and the advice of what they would say to prioritize. And I was able to see between whether I wanted to be in a certain place and kind of do a more generalist role, focus on something more technical, or make a big leap like I did to end up in Philadelphia in the role I was now.
Awesome. Thanks for jumping back in there, Margot, and sharing for everybody to sharing about their match experience. Just to kind of summarize some things, match exists in April, and once match begins, we actually have job fairs throughout several VFA cities. It's not that those job fairs are regional. So, for example, if the job fair is in Birmingham, all of the companies from the Southeast would come to that job fair, and you can kind of think of it as like speed dating. You'll get matched up with like several entrepreneurs, and you'll talk to like 5 to 10 companies in one day to expedite conversations. We can get into some more of that, but I'd like to hear about a day in the life of these fellows' experience. So could you all share what your role is at your company and what it is that your company does?
I'll kick off since I went last time. And I see a question in the chat for me already. This is so exciting. Yeah, so I am on the development team of a real estate firm when it boils down to it. But what was a little bit different was working in something development related. And there were a lot of real estate related companies on Match, and I didn't exactly have the technical background of something architecture or civil engineering related. And so I got to kind of pitch whether I wanted to go more towards like green infrastructure and marketing on those, or public health related companies that had kind of like a certain urban footprint within their cities. And so I actually really just got lucky that VFA happened to, within their giant scope, have my exact dream company that wanted my exact random niche of interest. And they reached out to me, and it was just an immediate fit and like completely clicked from day one, which I was not anticipating at all. And so I have gotten to grow into definitely what I thought I was going to be doing here is a lot more whittled down, and it took the energy that you have when you're a senior of wanting to contribute and to be really excited and passionate about what you're doing, and to learn how that actually fits into real companies in the real world. But without VFA, like I would not have found exactly what I wanted to be doing from graduation. Like this opportunity just genuinely didn't exist anywhere else, which was really cool.
Yeah, I can hop in. Guess we're doing like a snake draft. So I totally agree with Margot. So I'm doing product marketing analytics at a company called Fleetio in Birmingham. And what product marketing analytics ends up being is it's a mix of product marketing, which is basically communicating the value of our product to our customers. So it's making sure that our website is up to date and is telling the story as effectively. It's writing emails and in-app messages to our customers to make sure that they know about our latest features that our development team have been working on, and that if they're new customers, that they're being properly onboarded because we have such a big product and they can do so much. And so it's really telling that story as effectively as possible. And then it's also on the analytics side, it's trying to understand how can we quantify the value that we're creating as a company for our customers. And it's looking into our users and how they're using our product. And, if they're not adopting a feature as we expected, it's trying to understand, are we telling the story ineffectively, or maybe did we miss the mark on a feature, and do we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what is it that really that the user wants, what's going to be as valuable as possible for them. And so I think, similar to Margot, it was exactly what I was looking for. I know that in the kind of before I joined VFA, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I was applying for consulting jobs. I was looking at different things. But I was kind of studying data analytics, and I was really involved in the marketing community in college. And so I think this opportunity of allowing me to, really do something that was about marketing is something that I was really passionate about, but also be able to flex some more technical skills and gain those data skills that I really wanted to gain was something that I really wouldn't have been able to find anywhere else. And I love my job. My company is awesome. We have a really awesome culture, and our leadership is super intentional about growth and about building a really positive culture. And my company has almost doubled in people. I think more than doubled now since I started. And so it's just been really cool to see that growth, and to really be a part of that, and get that responsibility, and get the flexibility to create value for the company while also being able to learn the skills that I think are really going to help me professionally down the line.
Right, I'll jump in here. I'll focus on the 2 years of my fellowship because I think that's most pertinent to everyone on the call here. So I joined, as I mentioned earlier, as the third employee, and the official title was Director of Operations. But as you know, most of us know who work in startups, if you work at a small enough company, you can really give yourself any title that sounds important. And so I came in and really had that jack of all trades experience where we had a developer and we had a president who was the head of marketing and business development, and everything else fell to me to take care of. So it's kind of like the glue that kept the company together with all of customer support. At the time I joined, we actually had 4 full-time employees in the Philippines doing support. So I immediately started managing that team. We redid our mobile app on iOS and Android. So I worked with a local designer that we hired as a contractor to reskin and redesign the Ticketfire mobile app. Another thing that we were looking at was KPIs and weekly meetings and the things that we should be tracking. So created reports that we use during our weekly meetings to study the health of the business. And then other things, that I looked at were HR, hiring, compliance. So you can tell it's really all over the map. And that was important for me because when I came out of college, I had an engineering degree, but I don't really consider myself an engineering by trade. And I've taken enough engineering classes and enough business classes that it puts me in a really nice sweet spot, kind of as a product manager, or something along those lines. And so by joining a small company, I actually felt like I gave myself a couple of years to dig deeper into what I enjoyed and what I liked, instead of labeling myself as a PM product manager coming out of school. So now I'm at Bark, and I'm still working in operations because that was what I enjoyed most, was being the glue behind the scenes that kept everything together.
Yeah, I'll hop in here and say, so my company is in the IoT space. What that basically means is we're a lighting controls company. So we program your lights to talk to you so that you can set them on schedules and like dim them and time. It's all about like reducing energy waste. So it has that sustainability focus. But I did see someone ask about like the scope of the size of these projects, kind of alluding to what Slater said. I started in like a customer success role, but within a week, I was helping our engineering team. Since my company is an engineering firm, I was helping them program lights at a hospital, and I have no engineering background. So it's pretty much like you need to do what needs to get done. My team there's about 14 of us now, so pretty much everything. So my role is technically anything that touches the customer. So that could mean things like making sure shipments of our products are going out on time, checking in that all of our devices are fully functioning, also project managing our largest sites. So we're currently working on a hospital here in Detroit, so making sure that all of the programming for that hospital gets done by the end of the day because our inspection's tomorrow. So our scope is pretty wide, and it's very dependent on your company, but I will say that through VFA, getting this experience and just having the trust already built in for you from your company, knowing that like VFA is like a more, like they vet the fellows pretty well, so they know that they're getting the best and the brightest. So being able to jump on different things right away is pretty fun. And it's really cool. My company is very open into me trying out new things every now and then, so I do have that opportunity as well.
Appreciate everybody giving a thorough introduction about their role in their company. Our third question is, what has been the most rewarding part of your fellowship?
I think we're snaking back, so I'll go first. I think the most rewarding part, which I talked a little bit about before, has been the people. So just in Detroit alone, we have someone who started their own fashion company, someone who's started an engineering company, someone who's really into learning more about smart buildings. So we pretty much have a little bit of everything, which is pretty cool because I would never have met these people outside of the fellowship. So having the opportunity to not only learn from mentors like people talked about earlier, but also learn from your fellow peers and the experiences that they have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'd add to that that also learning about the city that you live in. I think one of the really awesome things about the VFA community is that you have a lot of really like-minded people who are interested in being, really civically minded, interested in not just wanting to be in a place, but to really live in a place and to know about the all the cool stuff that's going on in their city, not live in a bubble. And so I think that one of the most rewarding parts of my fellowship, we had one of the older fellows in Birmingham who had been there since 2015. He had um, a kind of tradition of doing road trips around the South. That was his hobby, and so I got to join in on one of his road trips. There was a big tornado um, in Alabama in Lee County, and so we actually did a road trip down there and helped with the tornado relief. It was a bunch of friends from VFA and then also a few friends outside of VFA who also live in Birmingham. Um, and it was really cool. It's just an experience that I feel like I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do if I had been living in a maybe a bigger city. And I probably wouldn't have moved to Birmingham if it weren't for VFA. And so being able to go down there and really see the community coming together to help neighbors whose houses had been destroyed, and it was crazy. There were like trees everywhere, just totally destroyed by these tornadoes. And so it was really cool to be able to go with kind of my new community and be a part of that and see a part of the country and help out where I might have not been able to had I not been living in Birmingham.
It's awesome. Yeah, I think the narrative that you'll hear, and it's 100% true, and almost every fellow says it, is the community. When I first moved to Columbus, there were 3 years of fellows who had been in Columbus before me. And so immediately when moving in, um, just had this sense of community that, lived with other fellows my year, went to startup weekends and did other fun things around Columbus, who knew their way around. People like J-Rob, who actually J-Rob was born in Columbus, right? Or at least grew up in Columbus. And then having the fellows who came after us in Columbus and kind of showing them the ropes. And so when I think about VFA and what's super rewarding, it's kind of like this extended portion of college where you have that same camaraderie and excitement and joy of solving challenges and having fun, but you also get paid and learn real skills, solve really tough problems, and work towards what you want to work towards next. So for me, it's been community, and then everything else kind of falls after that.
Yeah, and not to just continually echo on this, but I think it's difficult for us to articulate why this community is so valuable to people that just aren't in it quite yet, because it's really in no other way have I met 200 new friends that I know so well and like got along with so immediately. At training camp, I actually went away for a weekend to have a reunion with my college best friends. And I noticed a complete difference even within the 2 weeks that I had been with Venture for America Fellows, that I was like, what is it about this group that just, they have they just go after whatever they want, have such strong articulate opinions and are so well researched and interesting, and just a really warm, kind group to get along with so easily. And that's translated to now, I think twofold. One is that I have had a support system for someone that never really actually considered themselves going into the startup space. Actually really starting to see myself as somebody who could ever start a company, and watching people do that around me. It's no problem for them getting up on stage pitching to to 300 people an idea that they had, and people being so supportive. I mean, this summer we had a fellow that was pitching to the CEO of Venture for America and got asked a question about their business plan, and his response was, "I don't know." I don't have an answer for that. And we all clapped. Like, we all were like, that's amazing. You're out there trying your thing. And I think when you graduate, it's just such a wide net of possibilities that you could do after college. And startup is usually not one that you feel like has any kind of community behind it. And so I've watched so many people, even in the last year, like really come into themselves and believe in their future and what they can contribute at their company way more than even just 12 months ago, which has been really incredible.
Thanks everybody for sharing the most rewarding part. And so I'd like to kick it to the other end of the spectrum. What has been the most challenging part?
Off of that growth, it doesn't come without some growing pains. I would say the most challenging part is just how quickly a lot of this happens. I mean, it's a long, arduous process to get through VFA, and you're meeting all these brand new people all over, coming from all over the country, and a lot of them are talking about moving to cities that you probably have never been to. And so it's just kind of wrapping your head around the whole VFA process. And then you meet these 200 new best friends that want to support and encourage you to go after your wildest hopes and dreams. And it's just kind of like not something that you probably got in college. And so it's taking kind of the personal step to decide that VFA is really something you know that you want to do, and you're willing to put in the work to make it happen, and trying to navigate where that energy fits into VFA, into your class in VFA and the older fellows, into the new city that you go into. And then when you get to your job, like all you want to do is contribute because you're so excited that you finally made it there. And then your job has like a lot of ideas about how you should actually contribute and things you need to learn about your field. And so I think the most challenging part, but I'm so glad that I feel like I am already accomplishing it a year in, is really finding your exact space and kind of refining that excitement you have out of college into something tangible and productive.
I'll just jump in here, Gerald. The most challenging thing for me was feeling comfortable where I was at around so many brilliant and educated and dynamic people who are working on really cool things. And to go deeper into that, so I was at Ticketfire. Over my 2 years, the company grew from 3 employees to 6 full-time employees, which for me is not what I hoped or expected. I was hoping it was more like 3 to 100, but 3 to 6 was reality. And we did grow, 200%. We had some nice movement that kept me there for 3 years, but it was really challenging seeing other people working at companies that grew from, kind of like Ben said, where they doubled in headcount in the 20s. Or my girlfriend who works in Columbus, she was employee 15 at a startup and they have over 700. So I think a lot of times when you're in this community, which I think a lot of us, I wouldn't say it's competitive, it's more just, am I at the best opportunity for myself at this moment? Not wanting to jump to another job right away because something else, the grass looks greener, something else. So it was really challenging for me to keep my head down and work hard and have faith, even though I saw a lot of cool things around me. So kind of a weird challenge, but one that was, I felt, consistently throughout all of my 3 years.
I'll hop in real quick and say kind of what was said before, but also like being the youngest, I just graduated from college in May, and it definitely was a challenge. One, trusting that like being given all this responsibility that I could handle it as a full-time employee and kind of getting out of that college mindset. And another challenge was just the transition. Like I was super involved in college, part of a lot of organizations, did a lot of things. And now once you join like adulthood, it all gets channeled into one thing that you really do as your main focus. So the challenge of one, being okay with that, and two, if it's not, finding other avenues to still continue to learn and grow outside of your work with that as a priority.
Yeah, and going off of what Rana said, there's I think something that comes a lot with having a lot of responsibility, and a lot of times it can be kind of ambiguous responsibility, um, where when you're in school, you kind of have your assignment or your project, and you know exactly what they're looking for, and you write your paper and you turn it in. But kind of in the working world, and something that I had to get used to was, Fleetio is a very, or we believe a lot in putting trust in our peers and our the other people who work for the company, um, and so you're very rarely going to have anybody who's trying to micromanage you or who's checking in constantly to see if you finish something. And so a lot of times that responsibility, and with so much trust put on yourself, it can be kind of daunting. Um, and another thing about Fleetio, which I think is kind of specific to my situation, and isn't true for every company, but about a third of our employees work remote full time. And so because of that, we have a really flexible remote working schedule. But I remember the first time that I was working, in a coffee shop, not in the office. It was a lot to kind of get over that mental hurdle of, okay, like there's a lot of trust in me to manage my time effectively, to be doing the work that I need to do and to get all my stuff done. Um, and so definitely that ambiguity that just comes with working in a you know business but non-corporate environment, um, that I think is true for a lot of startups, um, is something that can be kind of scary. But it's something that over time it's becomes kind of the opposite, where like I now I couldn't imagine working for a company where I was being micromanaged or where I had to jump through a bunch of corporate hurdles to get anything done. So it's scary at first, but then it becomes a real positive.
Awesome. Appreciate you all being open about, the challenging points as well as the, most rewarding points. And so we have about 13 minutes left, and we have one big question and then like one rapid fire question for our panelists. You all have been lighting up the chat feature, and I promised you Q&A. So what I'm going to do once we hear from our panelists on these next two questions is I'm going to read through my answers to all of your questions, and I've organized them into buckets. That's likely going to go over 5:30. If you'd like to hear the answer to your questions and others, you can hang around. If not, this is going to be recorded and sent to you. So we're probably going to be hanging out until 5:45. No need for our panelists to stay until that time, but I just want to let you know we will get to your questions. So the second to last question that I have for the panelist is, what are the next steps in your career? And if you could comment on any ways that you have engaged with the launch team's resources, either during your fellowship or after the fellowship, because several people have asked, how we as fellows have taken advantage of the entrepreneurship launch team's resources. So Ben, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So, next career steps. Honestly, I plan to stay at Fleetio, in Birmingham. Um, I think Fleetio is just such an awesome organization, and personally, I have a lot of the flexibility and responsibility, that I think a lot of people spend long careers working for. And luckily with Fleetio, that just kind of is trust that comes right off the bat. Um, and so and also, like, I love living in Birmingham, and it's a really easy place to live. Um, there's a lot of really great outdoors things right outside of the city, and it becomes really easy to travel to places Nashville is less than 3 hours away. Atlanta is only 2 hours away. New Orleans is a 5 hour drive. And so it gets really easy to see friends and to go and visit different places. So I'm planning on staying at my company. Gerald, what was the second part of that?
Relate just in terms of any ways that you've taken advantage of the resources provided by the launch team.
Is mentorship included in that?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess about almost a year ago now, maybe 9 months, um, VFA did kind of the first round of mentorship matching where whether it was older fellows or professionals from that fellows just know in their city networks that weren't involved with VFA, offered to uh, spend, I think it was an hour a month, um, having a conversation with a current fellow, from anything from dealing with problems at work to helping them with a problem. And in my experience, I was matched with um, a professional in Charlotte who was running the product marketing team at a company that had just finished going through their kind of rapid growth phase and was at, I think, 500 people. And when she started, they were at 80. Um, and so I think that was just a super helpful experience. We talked once a month, and each time I would kind of bring to her a project I was working on at work. One time it was working on our kind of net promoter score, measuring our customers' happiness. Another time it was trying to kind of build a predictive model to be able to predict whether whether any of our customers would churn in a set time frame. And each time she just had such a wealth of knowledge that was super helpful for me kind of finishing and doing my projects the best that I could. And so that was definitely a resource that, I guess I could have done the projects without it, but just having that resource allowed me to have my project just be on a different level. And that was really helpful.
As a 2019er, we're just starting to get exposed to a lot of the resources that the launch team offers. One of them being, once you become a fellow, every city has a welcome weekend, and Julia, who's on the launch team, is like based out. She led this ideation session where we started talking about different problems that we were noticing and brainstorming different ways that we can solve them. Some people have already decided that they want to see more of their ideas come through. So people are working on teams now to figure out how to solve their problems. So a lot of it is VFA led, but there's also a lot of it that you have to take on your own if you want to continue and see things more.
And what's your next step in your career, even though you're a couple months into your job?
I have no idea. So I started, like I said, I studied international politics, and now I work at an engineering firm, and I didn't know how much I would like it, but I absolutely love it and could see myself here for a little bit. So it's really just going with the flow, seeing as much as I can learn and where it takes me from there. But I have no idea as of now.
It's all good. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up either. Slater, what's happening?
Yep, same boat over here. Well, I mean, the reason I switched jobs a month and a half, month ago, was my velocity of learning wasn't as high as it should be. And so that was something that I kind of came to the conclusion of talking to mentors and other people that helped me, was that when I was at a very small company, the scale of the problems that you're working on are different than working at a company that has 500 plus people like BarkBox does. So I realized that while my time at Ticketfire was super, super important in allowing me to see into every facet of a business, I needed to take those skills and then work with people who had a little bit better understanding of what it means to run a sophisticated company that makes $250+ million a year. So what are career next steps? For me, it's really getting into that more sophisticated company, learning from bosses that have been there and done that, So kind of from that really early stage startup into a, more startup company that's, has some nice revenue, and is tackling different challenges. I do hopefully one day hope to start my own company, but the thing that I've told myself is if I can't sleep over an idea for multiple nights in a row, then I know it might be a good idea. But I've been sleeping pretty well for the last couple of years, luckily. So no great idea yet that I've been willing to go after. And then just kind of thinking about launch and what you said, J. Rob. I've actually, similar to Ben, really enjoyed the mentorship program. I think he's a 2018 fellow based out of San Antonio that he actually just emailed me today. We're catching up next week. So that's been great, continuing experience, having relationships there. But just to kind of piggyback off my friends, we did mention community. One of my best friends, Brandon Gell, went to the VFA Accelerator. We've got a bunch of other friends that go through the accelerator every year. Really took that time to start his own company, then moved to New York, raised a seed round of $3+ million, has 20+ employees, and has a ton of awesome traction. And he's the CEO of the company. He conceived it while he was a year into the VFA fellowship program, and he used all the resources that VFA provided to really launch him into a really potentially great company called Clyde. If you guys are interested in looking up CLYDE. So even though I didn't take part in that, outside of brainstorming some initial ideas with him where we lived together in Columbus, that just kind of touches on the VFA Accelerator part, which I think is really interesting for all you entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, I definitely want to stay at Shift Capital for the foreseeable future, but VFA has helped me realize in like a very concrete way that I don't have to kind of stay. The person above me has 10 years of experience and the next person above me has 20 years of experience. And I think if I was a young 20-year-old at any other company, I would feel like, oh, I'm going to be here for the next 10 and 20 years before I can be where they are. But VFA has really helped me see how I can contribute at like a caliber of someone with that expertise, even where I am now, and see myself as someone who like adds a lot of value to the real estate space as a young woman. And even to the point now where, like, touching on the mentorship program, I met my mentor, just become truly like, we text like every other day. She's been such a great resource. So I've never had a female mentor in real estate before, especially a woman of color. And now I'm helping plan the VFA Women's Summit. And so those two things help me kind of get out of the very technical space of just real estate and see and grow my own like self-identity of like a leading woman that could eventually like create something on my own one day.
Appreciate y'all letting us into your dreams and career next steps. And it's 5:28 Eastern, and I've got one rapid fire question for the panelists before we thank them. When thinking about when you were in the shoes of everybody who's on this call or watching this webinar, what's one piece of advice that you'd share with them?
Reach out to anyone, truly. Like there's so many people that are now my like really good friends that I just asked anyone for advice. So we're all very accessible and would love to talk to you. So get as much advice as you can. Now it's better to ask than to wonder, and let that affect where you end up. Everyone's willing to reach out.
I've got to take this from Ben before he can jump on it because he mentioned it earlier. No, I'm just kidding. He said, be open to different cities, to different experiences, to different job titles, to different companies that might not be exactly what you've penciled for yourself. I think that's so important. You meet so many young fellows or people who want to join VFA who say, I want to go to just Philly, or I'm only interested in New Orleans. And I think if you go into the VFA process with that in mind, you're going to miss potentially what is the best opportunity in a place like St. Louis, which will propel your career for many years to come. And you might even meet your future partner there. Who knows? So just be open, and sorry for taking that from you, Ben.
I think piggybacking off of that, it's okay to not know. When I first started my VFA journey in the match process, I had no idea what I was looking for. I didn't really know what was out there. So it's okay to not know. And with that, be open to everything that Slater just mentioned.
Yeah, Slater totally took what I was gonna say. But I think I'll throw in there that, you know, one of the really cool things that we did at training camp were these things called credos, which is basically where a number of fellows would get up and talk at the beginning of the day before we started any programming about an experience they had that was, you know, that they felt really embodied one of the 5 VFA values. And it was really through hearing those stories of our peers that were just so incredible that made me think a lot about kind of how the VFA values, you know, were like how I could implement those in my life. And so I think that that's one piece of advice that I would have, which is like just really, you know, as you're going through this process, I think it is so unique compared to a lot of job application processes where VFA really does ask that you reflect on your values and reflect on, you know, like what does work mean for you? How does work you know, connect with the life that you want? And you know, where do those two intersect? And so, you know, just really being intentional about, you know, your values and reflecting as you go throughout this process, because, you know, it's really such a lucky thing to be a part of.
Awesome. Well, I want to start by thanking our panelists. And if you want to go off mute and clap it up with me, want to give a shout out to all 4 of our panelists who took an hour out of their day to help everybody with their applications. Really appreciate all 4 of you for volunteering your time and giving back to the community. So I'm about to go into Q&A mode, and I'm about to go rapid fire through these questions. So you don't have to stick around, but I'm going to get through everybody's questions. So to all 4 of you, thank you. We'll be in touch. Appreciate y'all volunteering your time.
See you guys. Thanks, J-Rob.
No doubt, man. Awesome. So I'm going to let y'all know how this is about to go. It's 5:32, which means we're 2 minutes over. I'm going to rip through these questions by 5:45. So if you want to hang out, give me 13 minutes. The chat feature is now closed because y'all were letting it rip throughout the entire presentation. So I'm going to close it, and I can't see your questions anymore. But what I'm going to do is I have a list here, and I have organized your questions by category. I'm going to go through question by question. I'm going to give a shout out to the person who asked it. Some questions I've combined. Some questions I tried to throw to the panelists during the presentation, but I'm going to get through them all, and we're going to do it in the next 12 minutes. All right? So the first category is application and timeline. The second category is match. The third is salary and quality of life. The fourth is on the job. The fifth is the entrepreneurship team's resources. We also call that the launch team. So excuse me if we mix those things up at all internally. And lastly is after the fellowship. Here we go. I'm long-winded, so I'm going to try to do my best. All right, Tessa, she asked, how do you know if VFA is right for you? What type of person do you have to be to work for a startup and be a successful fellow? We have 2 programmatic outcomes at Venture for America. One is to become a leader at a startup. The second is to become a founder. You'll see that the vast majority of the fellows who spoke, they see themselves as leaders at startups. They want to stay at their company. When VFA first started, we were like only focused on founders. It turns out that only 30% of alumni with Venture for America have started a company with us. Everybody else is like still working at a startup, like still like Slater, like I want to nail this. I want to learn this. And then one day when I get my crazy idea, I'll do it with VFA or outside of VFA. So you don't have to have an idea. If you do, I've got some stuff for you later, but that's how you know if VFA is the right fit for you. If you resonate with both or either of those career paths, and you're like excited by our program, our mission, speak to all of that explicitly in your application. Kim Yada, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, asked if you're graduating in 20, is there another application process for VFA? If you are graduating by May 2020, you're good to go. If you graduate after May 2020, you have to apply next year. Chris, what if your interests, skill sets don't fall under one of the drop-down options in the pitch part of the essay? These are like general drop-downs that are going to be on match. So like perhaps you have like a more technical role or something that doesn't fit neatly. Pick one, because the vast majority of the options on match are going to fall into a bucket. Sales, operations, marketing, software engineering, project management, product development, right? Like these are big categories. Figure out a way to like make it work. It's an exercise. Helena, what percentage of applications make it to the final phase? That's not important. What's important is that you speak to your experience. You speak to why VFA is the next best fit in your career. This is not a numbers game, right? Like this is not trying to get into college and like, am I one of this percentage? There are 200 spots in the class of 2020. Those 200 spots are reserved for people who can articulate why this is the next best step in their career, who can articulate that they want to be a startup leader, a founder, and why. That's and or one of those two things. To talk about why they resonate with this mission, this program, what they're going to contribute, what they're going to take from it, right? The entire exercise is an application process is built on that. Don't worry about numbers. Expedited offers 16 Salant. I don't know if that's your name or your username. If you get to selection day, we can get to you an expedited offer, but like we can't expedite an offer like through the steps that remain. You have to hit those in order. So once you hit selection day, good to go. And let us know about that, but like you got to go through the steps. Heather and Ram asked about the schedule from like December to April. This is excellent because all of you will know that you're fellows by December. You'll have onboarding into the fellowship in preparation for match, which means that you have like 4 months to get ready to match, to talk to as many fellows as possible, to work with the team on your match preferences, your pitch, your resume. Y'all have plenty of time and we're going to fill it up. If you're a senior, you should enjoy being a senior because it's going to be the precious time of your life. If you're in a post-grad, you should continue to make money, save money, and develop your skills. Everybody should be working on professional development during that time. Zach, what skills make you a successful VFA fellow? What skills are most helpful in a startup environment? I'm actually going to speak to soft skills, integrity, character, having an internal locus of control, meaning like I am going to focus on things that I'm going to control, right? I'm a salesperson at my company. I'm not worried about like what the CEO is doing. Like that's not really my role. I'm focusing on like my sales and driving growth through my sales every day. Internal locus of control, managing up, helping my manager manage me, right? These are all things that have to do with like character and disposition. It has nothing to do with coding. It has nothing to do with starting a business. It's really like, are you a good person to work with? And like, are you going to hustle like every single day, no matter what? Grit, integrity, having what it takes. Uttara, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. On what average, what percentage of VFA fellows have higher degrees or some experience post-grad? I don't know the exact percentage, but there are like many fellows each year that join after having work experience. For the class of 2020, you're eligible to join if you graduated between 2017 and 2020. Take in mind that the majority of roles are like entry level or like intermediate, like a junior, senior level person on a team. We're thinking like 1 to 4 years outside of school. So the roles are set up for 2017 through 2020, which is why we accept fellows or candidates from those years. Match. Tessa asked about city. You don't pick a city. You're going to interview with a company that happens to be in that city. And if you both like each other and you accept that job, you will move to that city. If you haven't been to these cities before, you should talk to as many fellows as possible. You should go to as many job fairs as possible. You should take advantage of a selection day that's in one of the cities. You should read on these cities. Fellows are the best way to learn about that. And you will go on on-sites to a company before you accept a position there. Helena asked about switching from a technical role to a business-focused role. So a lot of fellows like to pick up something different than what they did in college. So you can think about like finishing with 2 years in a position that was like different than your skill set. Now you have like 2 skills to like go and start your business or to be a leader at a startup. Salary and quality of life. How's the work-life balance for a typical fellow? Do you feel like the VFA salary is comfortable to live on? That's Jessica. Catherine asked about salaries and quality of life. I'll stop there. So let's talk salary. The median salary for fellows in the class of 2019 was $47,000. What does $47,000 mean? First of all, it's the median, it's not the average, which means if you take the person in the middle, if you line all the fellows up, the fellow that made the most and the fellow that made the least, the one in the middle was $47,000, which means a lot of fellows were in that range. Salespeople and people in technical roles like software engineers are north of 47,000 generally. People that are in generalist roles tend to be a little bit lower than $47,000. Let's talk about quality of life. $47,000 in San Francisco or New York is tough. $47,000 is more than what I made when I was a first-year fellow and I lived in New Orleans. I had a roommate who was a VFA fellow. Our rent was like $800, which was high compared to a lot of our peers. A lot of our peers were like $500, $600, $700 in a triple, kind of doing the college 2.0 thing, right? Like you're kind of 22. It's exciting to live with other VFA fellows and save money and split utilities each way. Quality life, like buying a burger in Birmingham versus New York, or a beer in Detroit versus San Francisco, there's no comparison. It's disgusting. And so it's affordable to live in our cities, which is like another perk of working at a startup in one of our cities as in comparison to the hubs. I can talk about quality of life in these cities all day, but like that's something that is really good to like talk to fellows about. Like, what's it like to like live in your city on your salary? If anybody has concerns about like salary, student debt, paying bills, sending a check home to mom and dad, these are really real things. These are my side of the house in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You should reach out to me and talk to me, and we can have a real talk conversation about that. How hard is it to make friends in a new city? You're going to a new city with VFA fellows in your class, as well as fellows who have been there before, and fellows who are going to come there after. I primarily found friends outside of VFA, like year 3, year 4. When I got settled at my gig, when I had been kicking it with VFA fellows for a while, and I really became a citizen of my city. I volunteered and I played basketball twice a week with 2 different groups of people. I'm going back to New Orleans this weekend for my cousin's wedding, and like I'm seeing my VFA friends, my work friends, but like also the guys that I volunteered with and hooped with. So it's a transition, but you have VFA fellows with you. It's 5:43 and we're not going to get done by 5:45, but I'm going to keep going and recording the answers to these questions. So Nicholas asked about leaving the fellowship. People leave the fellowship for health reasons. People leave the fellowship because they have amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunities elsewhere. They leave the fellowship because they need to be closer to their family. It's real life. The fellowship is it's a commitment, but it's not bondage. I don't really know a better way. I mean, it's to explain it, like you're signing up for an experience, and if it's not the right fit for you, we want what's best for you. So it's a 2-year commitment, and if you want access to the community, the network, the resources to alumni, you got to finish the 2 years. But people leave for various personal reasons, and we support them. Athara asked, how much time can you take for trips, visiting family? Can you arrange to work remotely? This is between you and your startup. So you are going to be a VFA fellow, but you will be employed and paid by the startup that you connect with during match. So each startup has like their own expectations for like work-life balance and travel and all of those things. Most startups are like kind of laid back. Okay, we're moving to on the job. Helena, for those of us with technical backgrounds, how much training will you get at the job? You're going to get training at training camp. You're also going to get training on the job. Realize that like startup training at startups is not like most startup strengths. That's why we have training camp, to like get you to a point where you can Google your way through most problems, or send a message to a fellow in your class or a fellow in an older class. Like that's like the nature of our community. It's not going to be the same training experience that you get if you like go and work at a big tech company or a business that's been around for 100 years. Like the companies are kind of building those processes out in terms of onboarding. Jessica asked about conflict between a fellow and a supervisor. VFA, if this is a serious first of all, we always have your back, right? We're always like with you before the company. If this is a serious conflict, like you can come to us. If this is something that like you need coaching on, you can also come to us. So we're a support system. If this is like serious, like maybe something like in terms of harassment, like we'll escalate it to the appropriate levels and like work with you on that. But if this is something like, hey, like me and my boss like aren't communicating effectively, that's when we'll kind of turn into more of like a coach. If something terrible would have happened at your startup and they went out of business, would you be able to work for a different company? Yes, this happened to me. My company went bankrupt 18 months into my fellowship. That's real, right? Like this is startups. If you're like not down for that, you might want to think about a different career path. But like companies fail all the time. The companies that VFA works with, we have sourced. And so we believe that they are on an upward trajectory, but sometimes that upward trajectory burns out, like at my company, and you run out of money and you crash. So the first call that I got when that happened was from a Venture for America team member. It was towards the end of my fellowship, so there was like a little bit of a gray area, but like they were like, hey, like, do you need help getting a job? And I was like, no, like I'm 18 months into my experience in New Orleans. I'm pretty well networked. I'm going to network my way around New Orleans and find a job in New Orleans. But they had my back. That could happen 6 months into your fellowship. It could happen as an alum. VFA has your back no matter what. What's turnover look like at our respective companies? That's like every single company is probably different. Young people transition jobs like every 12 to 18 months, and like young people tend to work at startups. So I think there's that, but like I'm not quite sure about turnover at respective companies, Helena. Abdul Zarak asked about networking. Abdul Zarak, you can network within the VFA community. You can network within your class. You can network within the VFA mentor portal. You can network within your city or within other cities. You can network within the different identity-based affinity groups that we have at Venture for America. I would like to say that Venture for America is a community, not a network, but you can take advantage of networking in a plethora of ways through Venture for America. Athara asked about changing roles or jobs during your placement. This kind of gets back into like what's best for you. This is not a rotational program, but like if you need to leave your job, the question that we're going to ask is like, why? And so we would hope that like between getting into Venture for America and Match, that like you're confident about like what you want to explore over the next 2 years, so that like switching interests would like not be something that you would feel like you'd have to do during that 2-year period. But we want what's best for you. So like we're going to onboard you and like push you hard on your preferences, so that like Match is like you find the next best fit for you and like not something quick. but we got your back. Like if you need to switch something up in the middle of the fellowship, like we're going to push you on that. But like we've always side with fellows first. You also asked a question about percentage of workload for VFA versus your company. So this kind of gets back into like the point that like extra. My headphones just died, excuse me. VFA is something extra. So like you 9 to 5 plus some hours, you're at your company. The obligations for VFA start in April with match, continue in July with training camp. Besides like the welcome weekend or an optional like periodic validation challenge with the entrepreneurship team, or a year into the fellowship, like traveling for Redux, which is when you like return to training camp to see your class and like do some professional development. There's not many obligations for VFA. A lot of the stuff in the city is like much more social than it is like you're going to leave your job to do something for VFA. Great question though. So you're going to get you're employed, healthcare, all of that by the company. You're just a fellow on the side and you can take advantage of our resources. Speaking of which, talking about the entrepreneurship team's resources. So if you have already started a company, this is my pitch to you. Venture for America, the program says go work for a startup for 2 years, essentially to learn on someone else's dime. That is the program. There's no like, I'm going to start my job and like majority of my work is going to be on my side project. That's not how it works. From 9 to 5, you go to work at your startup. From 5 to 9, you can like work on your side hustle. That being said, we have entrepreneurial resources available to fellows and alumni. You can take advantage of those resources as soon as you become a fellow. Meaning, as soon as you like move to your city. So like the focus between now and like next August is like where you're going to work in like training camp. Once you get there, like next August, it's like time to be like, okay, how am I going to take advantage of the validation challenges, the ideation sessions, the mentorship calls? How can I line myself up to go to the accelerator in the next 18 to 24 months? But the program is set up so that you go and work for a startup for 2 years, right? You emerge from that experience as a startup leader, right? You are comfortable managing people, on track to become a manager, director, C-level executive, VP. You are comfortable leading a project on your team. Like those are things that we believe are more helpful to like learn on someone else's dime. If you're at a point where like you need to go full-time on your business, VFA is not the next best fit because that's not the model. But if you're playing with something on the side, if you can manage that and a full-time job, and you want to take advantage of our resources, you can do so. I'm going to follow up on the webinar with this webinar with like a page on the website with all of the resources. I'm not going to give a download on them now because frankly, like you all need to read the website from front to back and like figure out why this is the next best fit for you. Because there's a lot of steps to this and there's a lot of things to take advantage of. And if you can't speak to like the parts that are most important to you, then you don't want it enough. Because there's someone else that like wants that spot of 1 of 200 and they're going to read the website from front to back. So do your homework, do your research, watch all of the webinars, read everything on the webinar or on the website that applies to you. If you don't want to do that, then like, I don't think you want this enough. I'm giving you the blueprint to like put forth your best application. So I'm going to send you a link on those resources. That's all I've got the time to go through right now. In terms of after the fellowship, to what extent have alumni engaged with these resources? 30% have started businesses with VFA. Slater and myself are the only 2 alumni on the call. And like both of us have participated in like mentorship calls, but like we haven't participated in like the ideation challenge or the validation challenge because we are not at that stage yet. If you are like a burning entrepreneur, you started something, you know,
wanted to start a business yesterday, reach out to the fellow founders and be like, is this the right fit for me? Like, what was it like starting a business with VFA? We have fellows that are making millions of dollars, generating millions of dollars at their companies, and they started businesses with VFA. We also have companies that are started by fellows who have failed, and like that's also a very real possibility. You should reach out to fellows about their experience and also read about that on the website. Helena asked about alumni staying in touch. Absolutely. Margot talked about like going to visit her friends like 2 weeks after college and it being different than training camp. I send memes to my friends. We talk about basketball. We send songs to each other. I'm talking about like my college friends. I am inspired by my Venture for America buddies. I'm going to St. Louis in like a month to hang out with like a group of guys that like I kicked it with at training camp. We get together like every 6 months and hang. One works in San Francisco, 2 work in San Francisco. One started a restaurant with Venture for America. Another switching to journalism. I work for the Venture for America team. Like those people, they inspire me. And like even people outside of my immediate friend group inspire me. Like I feel like I need to get organized enough to start a business because like I want to talk to like my fellows who have like started a business at that level. Like I feel like I haven't put in the time to take advantage of the opportunities in front of me. So alumni definitely stay in touch because we lived together for at least 2 years. And like we're at training camp together. And then we just like got to move after like hanging out for a month and having this like college 2.0 experience. And like you want to stay in touch. I went to every VFA city during my fellowship. And I'd recommend, tasking yourself with something similar. We're almost done here. We're going to be done by 6. I can promise you that. Graduate school, Helena, people do go to graduate school. Everybody's on a personal journey. I know some fellows that are going on to med school and they like want to start a business in like the medical space. Whatever you want to do, as long as it aligns with like being a startup leader or a founder this is a program for you. Athura asked where fellows go on to work after VFA, especially those outside of the ecosystem. People like want to live in the hubs, right? Like I want to live in New York City one day. I want to live in Los Angeles, California one day. There's nothing wrong with that, right? That's a part of the journey. Molly Adair was like a fellow in my class, worked at a startup in Providence, and then moved to Seattle and works for Amazon Web Services in a design role. So fellows like go all over. I spoke about my buddies that are living in San Francisco. This is a long journey. And the cool thing is that there are so many fellows in San Francisco, in New York, in Austin now that like they're alumni communities. And the thing that links us is we have this shared experience as being a fellow. Like if you didn't go to Birmingham or Detroit or Providence or San Antonio and like you can't talk this talk, then like you're kind of out. But if you're like, yo, like I was in New Orleans from like 2014 to 2018, like let me tell you how crazy it was when my startup went bankrupt. And then I went to another startup and it didn't grow and I quit. Like other fellows were like, oh, that happened to me in Miami. And like now we're sitting in Los Angeles, California, drinking a Corona on the beach. Like the journey is long and like the community is going to exist outside of VFA cities. Our mission is just focused on VFA cities. For the fellowship. And like plenty of alums stay in VFA cities like I did. And I moved to another one, Columbus. That's it, y'all. That's the last question. We're 30 minutes over. I appreciate y'all hanging out. I know some people are like in the chat, but I apologize. I'm not going to look at your questions because I hope we got them all. Next steps. I'm going to follow up with the recording of this webinar tomorrow morning, most likely. We're going to be texting you all this week if you haven't submitted your application. So this is going to come from me, my colleague Winston, or my colleague Millie. So we're going to like be in your phones, being like, what's up? Are you planning on submitting your application? Do you have any questions? Tell me how we can help you. Those text messages are like coming to you all on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. What can you do between now and next Monday? If you haven't viewed the webinars, I'm going to include those in the follow-up tomorrow. I'm also going to include an application toolkit for this round. You might want to like reach out to a fellow and be like, can I grab 20 minutes of your time this weekend? Do that via LinkedIn. I can't connect you with fellows. I don't have the capacity to do it, but you can go to where fellows work on the VFA website, click on a fellow who went to your school. If there hasn't been a fellow from your school, look for schools with only one fellow and reach out to that fellow and be like, what's it like being the first person from your school? Reach out to fellows who appear to identify how you identify, who work in an industry that you are interested in or a city that you are interested in. You got to tell your story, but oftentimes it's helpful to hear about other people's stories and journeys, which was like the whole point of this webinar. So my point is, y'all, like there are roughly 200 spots in the class of 2020. You like really got to do your homework and like put in the effort to be able to articulate why this is the next best step for you. The reason why I'm on this call 30 minutes past its time, the reason why those fellows jumped on this call is like, if you all want to join our community, we want you to join our community, and we want to do what we can do to help you, because folks did that for us, and like that's just the vibe of our entire group and our family. So do your homework, work really hard, and let us know how we can help you if we can. It's 6:01, which means it's time for me to have dinner. And I really appreciate y'all staying late and hanging out, watching this recording. If you are watching it at home, let us know how to help you, and congratulations on making it to this round.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Y'all have a great one.